I woke up around 2 in the morning and I was feeling pain on my left side.
Sai Baba devotee Jan Disanti on Christmas Eve, 2010.
My left arm, I couldn't breathe. It was really extreme. And I couldn't even crawl across the bed to get to my phone to dial 911.
This was not a dream for the fourth grade teacher from Colorado. It really happened. And it got worse.
And it got to the point to where I stopped breathing. And in comes Baba. And he looks at me, then he looks down at my body and he said, "What did you do?" What did I do? I didn't do anything, Baba. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't help myself. And then I just went out. And he said, "No, what did you say?"
What followed was an important exchange between Sai Baba and Jan Disanti. Jan says after Sai Baba left her side, she did finally call 911 and went to the hospital. It's quite a story. Welcome to Souljourns. This interview was recorded on January 8th, 2022. And a big Souljourns welcome to Jan Disanti, who's a wonderful person I've been looking forward to interviewing for quite some time. Jan, you live in Boulder, not Boulder, but Denver, Colorado, correct?
Yeah.
And I understand one of the most interesting elements of your many, many multifaceted stories with Baba has to do with how you became aware of Sai Baba. I'm not going to ask your age, but I am going to ask how it came to you, because I do know the person who informed you first about Sai Baba is much, much, much younger than you.
Yes. It actually came to me from one of my fourth grade students in my classroom. Direct from a child. That's the best invitation. So we usually start out our year with a cultural heritage project where our kids are presenting themselves, their faith, their families, what their practices are. And it was her turn that day. And she brought in a 5x7 of Baba and said, "Miss Disanti, this is my God, and he wants to know you."
He wants to know you.
He wants to know you. What an invitation. And she set that on my desk and something just like shot through my heart, like truth, like this is truth. And it never left my desk.
Well, let me ask you something. You weren't sitting there as a teacher, which you've been for many years, which is a very noble profession.
Yes.
You weren't sitting there without an interest in God, without having God in your life. As I understand, you're a fervent Christian still.
That is true. That is true. Just a strong woman of faith.
So what did you make of this?
Well, to tell you the truth, Ted, I've spent, my years opening myself to the value of learning all different faiths and the whole concept of her introducing me to God from her heart was very intriguing to me. And the way she framed that was a true invitation as far as me looking into, like, if her God wants to know me, then I want to know him. So that's how I responded to that. And in my classroom, it wasn't like a traditional way of having a classroom, but for me, it was important because our faith is who we are, like who we believe in. It's our values. So my children, I had a high shelf where my children could place symbols of their God and their faith, so that throughout the year, all they would have to do is glance up there and they were encouraged, right? But because of how she placed him on my desk and the words that she said, I left him on my desk rather than putting him on the shelf. And boy, did he have fun with me that whole year. Out of curiosity and things that I learned and then things that I experienced that year changed my whole life.
Well, we want to hear about some of those. And before we get to them, I want to ask you, do you have any idea, this is a number of years since that fourth greater brought you a change in your whole view of the universe and beyond. Do you have
Mm.
any idea if she's still around? Because I'd love for her to see this interview.
Oh my goodness. Not only is she still around, she and her family are prominent members of my family now. Like I see them just as relevant as, my blood family. And I've been able to watch her grow, watch her graduate, go into she's now working for the Navy as an electrical engineer, and she's musically talented. She taught me my first song, that I sang with her at the center the first time. Love is my form.
Love
She
is my
sang it with
friend.
me. Yeah, it's just she's been a really critical part of my stepping stones to self-realization. She and her family and her grandfather was a mentor for me for years around the human values. So just really, really a blessing from the whole family. But she's a bright, shining star.
Oh, that's great. Let's get on to some of the heavy lifting in your Sai story. You haven't been around Baba that many years, certainly not decades, but a good sized handful of years. But you've had some whoppers of stories that I recall. And I think I'd like to begin with my favorite story so far. And that is, I'm recording this right after Christmas in early January. I'm sorry we couldn't do it at Christmas time. I know you have a powerful Sai miracle story that happened on Christmas Day. The year was 2010. What was that about?
Well, I'm telling you, in the end, it was about my own self-realization of who I am, how powerful I am. So Christmas Eve, 2010, I was alone. My parents passed when I was young, and I'm not married and I don't have my own children. So I was alone on Christmas Eve, and that was pretty painful for me because Christmas is about sharing with your loved ones, right? Just the magic and the grace and the love of Christmas. And I was alone. So I just remember I was feeling so much in despair that I just cried myself to sleep and said, my last words was, I'm just going to die alone with a broken heart. And I woke up around 2 a.m. and I was feeling pain on my left side, my left arm. I couldn't breathe. It was really extreme. And I couldn't even crawl across the bed to get to my phone to dial 911. And it got to the point to where I stopped breathing. And then I left my body and I was looking down on my body, and in comes Baba. And he looks at me, then he looks down at my body and he said, "What did you do?" And I said, "What did I do? I didn't do anything, Baba. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't help myself." And then I just went out. And he said, "No, what did you say?" And I had to think for a moment. And then I remembered me saying, "I'm just going to die alone with a broken heart." And he said, "Yes." And he said, "You are powerful. Your words are powerful. You are God. You manifested your own death." And I was stunned. As you can imagine, I was stunned. Here's the Lord telling me I did that. And then he reaches down into my chest and he pulls my heart out and he puts it up to the light. And he said, "Do you see all those dark spots?" And all I could see was these black spots. And he said, "That's the pain of your past." And he put my heart in his hands like this, and he blew on it and then he held it back up to the light, and they were all gone. It was so incredible. And he said, "See, the past is the past, the present is now, and the future is the future." And he said, "You have a lot of work to do. And so he put my heart back into my chest, and then he slapped my chest and he said, now get to work. And my spirit flew back in. I mean, literally, I was in so much pain, but as you can imagine, I also was in shock of like what had happened, wondering, did I just imagine that? Was it just something that I was, experiencing? Because, most people don't experience near-death experiences or have that happen. So I was able to manage dialing 911, and the ambulance came and picked me up, and and the firemen were there, and they were so loving, and I was crying and telling them that God came and that I had died. And, of course they're going, okay, it's going to be okay, because some people might have problems believing something like that. And to tell you the truth, Ted, I was kind of struggling to believe it. And even at the hospital, like they ran all the tests on me, and there were 3 doctors in general, 2 males and 1 female, and they just couldn't find anything. They said, you have a beautiful, healthy heart. And I said, God did that. God did that for me, and I was telling them the truth, that he had, he had healed my heart and he had put it back, and that he did that for me. And he said I had work to do. And they were just shaking their heads. But the female doctor comes in and says, well, okay, they're having a hard time wrapping their mind around what you're saying. But she said, Jan, the only thing we can figure out is you had an anxiety attack mimicking a heart attack, because you have so much damage in your arm. Like I couldn't lift it, I couldn't move it, and I was going to have physical therapy for 6 months. And the moment she said that, Ted, I remembered Swami saying, you did this. You are God. Your words are powerful. And that's what we can do. I mean, we can do those things. And so, of course, driving home, I didn't have anyone to call. So I called a taxi, and I'm in the back seat, and I just told him to be patient with me. I said, I'm having to come into Jesus in the back seat. I have to talk to God. I just had a heart attack. So he was just smiling and very loving. And I know that was Swami too, like every person, every step of the way he placed with me. And I was crying, and I just said, you have to show me something. You have to let me know it was you. You have to let me know you're with me. I'm afraid, and I'm hurting. And, basically, if you're really God and you really brought me back, please show me. And our Lord, with all his compassion, all his love, I go in, I'm barely making it up the stairs, and I go to bow to thank him at his feet. I have a prayer room, and with his chair and everything. And I was just thanking him for loving me.
Oh, that's a great story.
For saving me, for bringing me back. And I looked up, and there is a gold necklace on his chair, where when I held it up to the light, Ted, it looked exactly like my healed heart, only it was a heart inside of a heart, like his heart inside of mine. Talk about a sign, right? And I'm wearing it today.
Okay, come a little closer and hold it very steady. Okay, good. That's a beautiful, beautiful heart.
That's what he gave me. He answers prayers. He's so faithful. That's what he did. I said, you have to show me that was you. That was you, Lord.
Well, I know
he did.
I know you have another 10 stories, and we're going to continue to hear them, but nothing will be able to top that story. And the reporter in me begs to ask a couple of questions because of my curiosity. So
okay.
Here you are, feeling you're probably going to die. You can't even dial 911. You say what you say in your heart, and in comes Sai Baba. How did he come in? Was he in the etheric body form? Was he in the physical body form? Did he walk through the door? What happened?
Well, I was basically on the ceiling looking down on my body. So he walked in, like walking in through my bedroom door, like he is, but he had his white robe on. That I know for sure, because that has most meaning to me because of Christmas. He wears that at Christmas, right? And
Right.
he had that white robe on.
So he was in
And
physical form,
yes,
and he talked to you directly.
he talked to me directly, like I was his child, like he was Sai mother.
Was he looking up to you towards the ceiling?
No, he was looking at me because we both were looking down at my body.
Oh, this is just a beautiful story. You mentioned almost casually that you felt that I think you said you knew that this was the time you became self-realized. Tell me a little bit about that, because
Yes.
in fact, it is Baba's most important message, which goes right over the head of many people who are devotees, including me, including many other people I know and love who are devotees. When we're not ready to understand the meaning of those words.
You know, I used to think that the realization was that God is with me on a level that I didn't even realize he was with me. But over the past few months, I've given a few interviews. And with my last interview, he looked at me and said, the interviewer, he said, what a gift of self-realization. And I didn't even put that together until then, Ted. It's true, because the words that he said to me is, you are God. You are powerful. What did you say? Right? So because he, first of all, he said, what did you do? So every word is so powerful that comes out of the Lord's mouth.
Without going through the books, without going through the lectures or the studies, you learned it at his feet, it sounds like.
Yeah, and in his heart, because he literally, to me, when he healed my heart of the pain of the past, which God can do, right? But he gave me the gift of making sure I knew it was him doing it for me. He took away the pain of my past. That's what he said. The past is the past. He said, see those dark places? Those are the pain of your past. They stay with us. They're in our DNA. They're part of our like cellular memory. And so he took that. He healed that for me. And he said, you have a lot of work to do.
I'm a little bit confused, because I would think there's no doubt in your mind, or those who know you, about what happened to you, that you have experienced this self-realization, making me wonder, what on earth is he talking about? What work do you have to do other than modeling your own self-awareness so that others will want what you have?
That is it. It's having a self-awareness, a consciousness. To me, it's like the Christ consciousness or the God consciousness that I have studied in scripture, that I have read about, but now I've personally experienced it through his grace. Nothing but grace. Like, it's not that I did anything to deserve it. You know, grace to me is, you know, it's freely given from God. So he has the plan, right? He has the plan on our lives. That's what I believe, amongst, you know, our passion and our faith and our understanding of who I am. Like, I had an understanding of who I am before that. Like, you know, I came in, I'm a light of love that he lit for sure. And I came in to hold a wholehearted presence for others, especially for children and families.
Well,
you know,
when others come close to you and they say, Jan Disanti, we know you to be a loving, fervent, ardent, pious Christian. How can you believe in somebody else's being God other than Jesus, other than the Father Almighty? What do you say to them?
I say that God is all things. Really, you may be surprised by this, but, you know, like, as a teacher, I had a child in my classroom present a biography of Jesus. They were doing biographies of other people, and he poised it and phrased it perfectly, Ted.
A fourth grader.
Yes. No, at this time I was teaching second grade.
Second grader.
Yes, a second grader. So he did his biography on Jesus because I asked him to do a biography on someone who has had a positive influence on their lives and their values, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he stood up, and they did paintings as well. I had them do like a painting of the face of whoever they were sharing about, and he did a painting of Jesus as black with dreadlocks, long, beautiful dreadlocks. I still have the picture, Ted. This is the impact it had. And he stood up and he shared his biography, how much Jesus had lived, the values he wants to live, and influenced his life. And then he shared his picture. And when he turned his picture and shared his picture, Jesus is black in the picture. And one of my white little boys stood up and he screamed across the classroom, "Jesus is black?" I mean, his eyes were so big. And without a flinch, this little boy said, "Jesus is all colors." He's, and that's the truth out of the mouth of babes. So God is different forms. You just know when you know the truth. And it's like, I knew the truth that he is God, and I don't see them as separate, although like I have pictures of them both, and I still study the scripture and the Bible, but his presence, his heart, it's all the God heart, or the God consciousness. God is all forms. What a great lesson that was that day.
From a second grader, and I want to
From
ask
a
you,
second grader.
I guess I have a son-in-law who's a sixth grade teacher. He's just superb at what he does. I don't think I've ever heard of a second grade teacher as an assignment to the students, having them write a biography, let alone be able to explain it to the level this young man did it at 6 or 7 years of age.
Yes, because at the beginning, they have to see representation of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So I had leaders pictured all over my classroom from all different walks of life. And I had their faith, their symbols of faith up on the shelf so they could see themselves. Because if God doesn't look like you, who am I?
Yeah.
I see God as mother too, mother divine.
Oh, sure.
So, like God looks like me too, and you too. So just having that opening from the very young life of children, but within ourselves, that's really a beautiful concept to live.
Jan, why you? I mean, you're so new to Baba. You barely made it to become a devotee before he left his body, his Mahasamadhi. You've been over to see him, I think, a year before he did leave his body.
6 months, but a year before he left the body, I did. But this happened, Ted, 6 months after I was blessed by him. So when I went to see him once again, this family of the child, Akila, that introduced me to him, they said his schools are dynamic, that I should visit his schools. And I served at a school with 54 different languages, children from all over the world. And
Denver.
I just wanted to be, I just wanted to be the best representative of a teacher that they could relate to and they could thrive from. So I just said in my heart, yes, like when we say yes in our heart to infinite possibilities, why wouldn't God bless us, right? So I signed up for the very last USA pilgrimage before his ascension. I mean, if God isn't, like connected to us in that way, I don't know who is. But when you're living on purpose and you want to do something for the greater good, I wanted to be the best teacher. And I heard, and then I researched and read, his schools were the best, and they're free, and they gave opportunities to children who otherwise wouldn't have had the opportunity, but were thriving. So I signed up for the pilgrimage and I went, and I was telling everyone there, like, I'm going to visit Baba's schools, and everyone was going, what are you talking about? You can't just visit his schools. You have to get permission from him. And I said, he will bless me. I just stayed firm in my faith. That's that God consciousness again. I'm going to keep bringing you back to that. And it got down to the last day, and people were saying, okay, so, but they told us we had to stand in our line. They told us, don't try to get up to the front, because, some people try to, sneak in or get up to the front to be blessed by him. And they said, you all have your assignment, so don't try to get up there. And so I was in like line 28, person number 7, and we go in, and this Save-A-Doll comes out of nowhere, and she grabs my arm, and I thought I was in trouble. So I said, I'm line 28, number 7. And she goes, no, Jan, you're going to the front. And at the moment she said that, I heard Baba say, I'm going to bless you. And
did she just pull you out of the line, just randomly?
She pulled me from way back, because we were coming in and we were doing the performance that day from the pilgrimage for the USA. And so I was staying in my line, and she walked all the way back there and got me and brought me to the front.
And you have no idea why?
Well, I do, because he blessed me. Then he came around the corner, he blessed me. He put his hand on my head. He said, I bless you with a school. I said, what should we call our school, Baba? And he says, Paro. And I said, what does that mean? And he said, it means to study or to learn. Then he said, yes, Bangaru, I give you permission to visit my schools. And he told me, get trained in the human values. And now today, I am a faculty for the Institute of Satyasai Education USA. It's like, not only did I get trained in the human values, I'm living in his purpose. So what he said was, you have a lot of work to do. I certainly do.
Well, let me ask you one question about that, because you made I want to make sure I heard it correctly. If you did, it's a phenomenal fact. You mentioned earlier that the Denver schools where you work and have worked for a while have representatives from 54 different languages as students?
Yes, we had children from all over the world.
I never knew that. And I wanted to know if you've ever had any conversations, short or long, with any of the fellow teachers or administrators or curriculum planners there about what you've learned really at the foot of the master about human values, how they can be taught.
I'm so glad you asked that, because I did my practicum for the Institute, for Swami's Institute. Remember, he told me, get trained in the human values. And so I did my practicum in my classroom. And after I started that, 2 more teachers went to get their certification from my school. I did an after school program in the human values for the STEM different subject areas, because my school is a Title I school. So it was a school where families, had needs, like that we could support them with. So my belief was, like living these values and doing my practicum in the classroom. People were coming in, Ted, and my children that year broke records across the whole North area on their curriculum scores too. So that got the attention of my principal for sure. She was like, what are you doing? And we combined it with monthly community service projects too.
I'm overwhelmed by just everything I heard. I want to say something that it's not that I don't say often at all. I've been doing these interviews on over 450 interviews in the last 22 years on Souljourns. This is one of the few where I've known ahead of time, as I'm in the midst of the first 10 minutes, that I want to do a follow-up on. So with your permission, I'd like to come back and do a subsequent follow-up Souljourns interview with other points that you have to say. I just know this is going to be of such
love that.
I just know that this is going to be of such interest to so many of my friends and acquaintances and fellow Sai Baba sisters and brothers. that they're going to want us to savor this. As a teacher, Muji says, to marinate in everything that you
Oh,
say.
Ted, I can't believe you said that. That's been my prayer to Swami, to have a shining light influence to inspire teachers.
Jan, it's just been a delight. And thank you so much for joining us on Souljourns today.
Been my joy too, Ted, and I look forward to more.
Good. Sai Ram, Sai Ram, Sai Ram.
Sai Ram.